Usually, when we talk about finding balance in our lives, there's this expectation of a perfectly curated Zen garden.
Oh, right. Like you just download the right meditation app and suddenly you're fixed.
Exactly. You download the app, you buy the really expensive matcha, and boom, you're supposed to just float above the chaos, like above your inbox, above your responsibilities.
Yeah, it's very much presented to us as an aesthetic these days.
It really is. It's this clean, highly marketable version of serenity. But the problem is,
It's entirely fragile.
right,
I mean, we like things to be comfortable, but the moment real life actually hits, that aesthetic just shatters.
yeah, like the moment you get a truly urgent, crisis level email from your boss,
Right.
or a sudden massive medical bill in the mail.
Right. Suddenly, that perfectly raked sand in your mental Zen garden is completely ruined because it was never actually designed to bear weight.
Exactly. It's just for show. But then, you step into the world of ancient philosophy, specifically the really unfiltered foundational stuff.
The stuff that doesn't care about looking good on Instagram.
Right. And suddenly that pristine Zen garden gets completely paved over. Because today, we're looking at a blueprint for navigating modern chaos that, well, it doesn't care about our aesthetics.
It is raw. It is jarring, honestly.
It operates on a level of unsentimental reality that most of us spend our entire lives, like, actively trying to avoid.
Which is precisely why it's so incredibly durable. I mean, it doesn't rely on conditions being perfect. It relies on conditions being exactly as they are.
And if you're joining us on this deep dive right now, you are probably dealing with a massive amount of info overload. I mean, you're taking in so much data, managing so many expectations.
Analyzing variables every single minute.
Yeah, your cognitive load is just constantly maxed out.
Yeah.
And you are desperately looking for a filter, right? A way to process reality without just burning out.
And to provide that filter, we're looking at an excerpt today that breaks down Chapter 5 of the Tao Te Ching.
But we aren't just reading ancient poetry today. We are looking at this through the lens of Stephen Mitchell's really highly accessible modern translation.
Right. Alongside the psychological or practical applications, our source material has actually extracted from it.
It takes this 2,500-year-old wisdom and applies it directly to the mechanics of, how you handle a hostile negotiation.
Or how you manage your family dynamics.
Yeah, or just how you write an email without losing your mind.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the very first lines of this chapter, they hit you like a bucket of ice water.
There is zero hand-holding here.
None. The text says, quote, "The universe is not humane. It ironies all things as straw dogs. The sage is not humane. He treats all people as straw dogs."
It completely shatters our modern expectation of what a spiritual text should sound like.
Oh, absolutely.
We expect ancient wisdom to tell us that the universe loves us, right? That we are special, that everything happens for a reason. And this text opens by telling us the exact opposite. It's so blunt. And to understand the psychology of this, we really have to look at the historical context our source material provides. Like, we need to know what a straw dog actually is in ancient Chinese culture.
Right, because it's not a pet. They were ceremonial objects, literally effigies made out of straw, tied together to look like dogs, and they were used as offerings in religious rituals.
Okay, so they were important.
Oh, hugely important. During the preparation and the actual ceremony, these straw dogs were treated with absolute unyielding reverence.
Like placed on an altar.
Exactly. Placed on the highest altar, adorned with decorations, people would literally bow to them. They were the focal point of the community's spiritual attention.
And here's the catch. The very second the ritual was over, their value dropped to absolute zero.
Literally zero. They weren't saved for the next year. They weren't put in a museum display. They were tossed aside into the dirt.
Thrown away.
Trampled on by the departing crowd or, used for kindling. And crucially, they were discarded without a single ounce of emotion.
No one felt bad for the straw dog.
No one. It had served its exact purpose in that exact moment in time, and when the moment passed, its value evaporated completely.
So it's like, revere it while it's useful, step on it when the clock runs out.
Basically, yeah.
And our source text uses this imagery to explain the universe's neutrality. The translation says the universe is not humane, which, that goes against every anthropomorphic comfort blanket we try to wrap ourselves in.
We desperately want to believe the universe is inherently kind.
Right. Or that karma is this cosmic ledger, like balancing the scales of justice in our favor if we do good things.
But the Tao, which we can understand as the fundamental operating system of reality or nature or the universe, It doesn't play favorites.
It doesn't care.
It isn't kind and it isn't cruel. Those are purely human labels we apply to events, after the fact
Right.
to make ourselves feel secure.
Just to make sense of things.
Exactly. The universe simply functions. Like
Yeah.
the rain falls on the crops and makes them grow, which feels really kind to the farmer.
Sure, it's a blessing.
But that exact same rain system moves over a mountain, causes a mudslide, and washes away a village.
Which feels unimaginably cruel.
Right. But the rain isn't operating on a moral axis. It's just water conforming to gravity and atmospheric pressure.
It sustains life without demanding gratitude, and it destroys life without feeling malice.
Mm.
It is absolute terrifying neutrality.
Terrifying is the right word for it, yeah.
And then the text takes this massive cosmic principle and immediately forces it onto our shoulders with the second line, "The sage is not humane. He treats all people as straw dogs."
That's the part that really gets people.
Because wait, calling a true leader or an enlightened person not humane, that sounds like a justification for being a sociopath in the boardroom.
It does. It really does.
How is this different from just being cold? Like, are we supposed to use our coworkers and our friends until they offer no more utility and then just discard them into the dirt?
What's fascinating here is that is the completely natural reaction because it triggers every single alarm bell we have about empathy.
Yeah, it feels wrong.
But if we look closely at the mechanics of the metaphor, it is not advocating for callousness or sociopathy. It is advocating for perfect, unattached equanimity.
Unattached equanimity. Okay, break that down.
Think about the first half of the straw dog's life cycle, the reverence part. When the sage engages with someone, they engage with absolute presence.
So they aren't blowing them off.
Not at all. You give your full, undivided attention to the person in front of you because that is what the present moment requires. That is the ritual. You revere the interaction.
But it's the attachment to the outcome where we get into trouble, right?
Precisely. We act with humaneness, which in this context means sentimentality, expectation, transactional ego.
About keeping score.
Exactly. We do a massive favor for a colleague, and we become deeply attached to the idea that they owe us their loyalty.
Well, I've been there.
Or we loan money to a toxic family member, and we become attached to the idea that this loan will finally be the thing that reforms them. We invest our ego into the outcome.
And when reality doesn't match our expectation,
When the colleague takes credit for our work, or the family member gambles the money away,
we feel betrayed. We suffer.
we suffer immensely. So when Mitchell says the sage is not humane, he means the sage is free from transactional sentimentality.
You care purely about the action itself.
Yes, not about the emotional kickback you get from it. You treat the event as a straw dog. You revere the work while you are doing it, and you let it go completely the second it is out of your hands.
You don't drag the emotional baggage of that interaction into the next hour of your day.
Right. Which is, frankly, the hardest cognitive shift a human being can make.
It really is. Which is why our source material pivots directly from the philosophy into practical application. The text calls this practice impersonal kindness.
Impersonal kindness, it sounds like an oxymoron.
It does, but it's actually like psychological armor. Let's contextualize this for the listener with a really basic analogy first.
Sure.
It's like picking up a piece of trash on the sidewalk. You don't pick it up so the sidewalk will thank you, right?
Right. The sidewalk doesn't care.
You just do it because the sidewalk needed clearing, and then you move on immediately, completely unbothered by the sidewalk's lack of gratitude.
That's a great baseline. Now let's scale that up to a high-stakes environment.
Okay, let's do it. Imagine you are in a high-pressure corporate environment. Your team is putting together a massive pitch, and one of your colleagues, who, frankly, you don't even like, is failing to hold up their end.
You're dropping the ball.
Completely. And if they fail, the whole team fails. So you step in, you work over the weekend, you fix their numbers, you polish the presentation, and the pitch is a huge success.
Okay, so if you are operating with personal kindness in this scenario,
Your ego is entirely wrapped up in this. You expect that colleague to sing your praises to the boss. You expect them to owe you big time.
and when Monday morning rolls around and that colleague stands up in front of the executives and takes 100% of the credit for the work you did,
You are shattered.
you are furious, resentful.
Yeah, and your cognitive energy for the rest of the week is completely drained by the injustice of it. You undergo massive ego depletion.
But if you operate with impersonal kindness, you approach the situation like a straw dog.
You stepped in and fixed the pitch simply because the reality of the situation demanded it.
The company needed the win, the team needed the baseline protected, and you had the capability to do it.
You did the right thing simply because it was the right thing to do in that exact moment. You weren't doing it to purchase loyalty or to solidify your identity as, like, the office savior.
Therefore, when they take the credit, your ego remains entirely intact.
You aren't destroyed.
No. You simply observe the reality of their character, update your internal data set about them, and move forward.
You are strategically cold and perfectly clear for your next move.
You remain resilient because your internal state is no longer tethered to external validation.
Wow. It is incredibly freeing when you think about it. You basically sever the covert contracts you make with everyone around you.
The secret scorecards.
Exactly. But shifting our internal architecture to actually support this kind of outward action, I mean, that requires a massive rewiring.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No,
Yeah.
because our minds are usually just chaotic messes of anxieties, scorekeeping, and deeply ingrained ego responses. So how do we actually cultivate a mind capable of this kind of impersonal detachment?
Well, to answer that, the source text moves to Stephen Mitchell's next major translation metaphor.
Right.
The translation reads, "The space between heaven and earth is like a bellows. The shape changes, but not the form. The more it moves, the more it yields."
A bellows, like the tool used to draw in and blast out air for a fire.
Exactly. It uses the physics of a bellows as a metaphor for the void. And the crucial property of a bellows isn't the leather or the wood on the outside.
It's the inside.
Right, its entire utility is derived from its internal emptiness. If you pack a bellows full of material, it cannot function. The empty space is the tool.
And in Western culture, we usually equate emptiness with, I don't know, nihilism or poverty or lack.
Yeah, an empty bank account, an empty schedule, an empty life. We panic at the thought of the void.
We really do.
But in Taoist philosophy, emptiness is potential energy. Like a compressed spring or a vacuum. These are empty spaces that hold immense power. The empty bellows is ready to receive and ready to give.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text makes a fascinating distinction here. The shape changes, but not the form.
Yes.
So if we look at a bellows in action, the external shape is constantly warping, right? It expands, it collapses, it contorts under pressure.
This has to pump the air.
And this perfectly mirrors the external chaos of our lives. The shape of our circumstances is always shifting. Market crashes, relationship changes, health crises. The shape is the distortion of the moment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the form is the structural integrity of being void.
So shape changes, but form stays the same.
Exactly. The form is the unchangeable reality that the inside remains empty. As long as the internal space remains empty of rigid expectations, massive egos, and inflexible demands, the pressure of the external world won't break you.
It will just compress you.
It will compress you, and in doing so, you will generate power. You will pump air.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because when we experience burnout, it is almost entirely because we have filled our internal space with concrete.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Concrete.
We fill ourselves with rigid structures of how our careers should look, how our partner must behave, how the world ought to treat us.
And when the external pressure of life pushes down on us, we can't yield.
We have no internal void to absorb the compression, so we shatter.
The text notes that the more it moves, the more it yields. The more you rely on this internal emptiness, the more energy you produce.
You are drawing from the infinite air around you.
Rather than trying to power your life from a finite, easily depleted tank of personal willpower.
And translating this into the modern world, the text calls this the bellows mindset, which, let's be honest, requires a radical departure from how we normally operate.
Radically different. We are conditioned to be full.
Always.
We hoard data, we hoard opinions, we have hot takes ready for every single news cycle. We wear our fullness as a badge of honor.
Yeah, like, my plate is completely full right now, we say that, wearing our exhaustion like a status symbol.
The modern world actively demands that we be full. It equates emptiness with ignorance. But the text poses a really subversive subtextual question. How does an empty mind solve a dynamic problem better than a full one?
Let's apply this to a difficult adversarial conversation.
Yeah.
Say, a high-stakes budget meeting tomorrow morning where you know another department is coming for your resources.
Oh, stressful.
Very. If you are operating with a full mind, you enter that room armed to the teeth, you have every stat memorized, you have anticipated their arguments, and you have your rebuttals locked and loaded.
And this is precisely where confirmation bias destroys your agility.
Because you're too full.
Yes. If you enter full of your own arguments, You are physically incapable of hearing new information.
Right.
If the other department head says something that doesn't fit your pre-planned script, perhaps they even offer a subtle concession or reveal a vulnerability, you won't hear it.
You're too busy internally polishing the rebuttal you've been practicing in the mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are fighting a ghost of your own making, not the reality in front of you.
I want you, the listener, to really think about this. Think about the last time you were in an argument with your partner or a colleague. Were you actually listening, or were you just waiting for your turn to speak?
Usually just waiting to speak.
Right. If you are just loading up your next point, you are a bellows filled with concrete. Nothing is being generated.
But if you embrace the bellows mindset, you enter that highly adversarial room entirely empty.
Which feels terrifying.
Terrifying to the ego, absolutely. Because it feels like walking into battle without armor.
But it's actually the ultimate intellectual agility. You enter with profound, unattached curiosity. You listen to what the person is actually saying in the present moment.
You absorb the raw data of reality rather than filtering it through the data of your assumptions.
Because you are empty, you have the internal space to process their perspective dynamically.
You yield to the reality of the situation, and in yielding, you generate entirely new, organic solutions that neither of you could have pre-planned.
You aren't forcing a prepackaged, rigid solution onto a constantly shifting problem. You're responding in real time.
But maintaining this emptiness requires immense discipline.
Oh, yeah.
Primarily because when we are full, we tend to leak words constantly. We over-explain. We talk to soothe our own anxiety.
Which directly feeds into the final stanza of the translation. It says, more words count for less. Hold fast to the center.
It is a profound warning about the limits of language. We suffer from the illusion that if we just find the perfect combination of vocabulary, we can control reality.
We think we can argue someone into respecting us.
Right. Or we think we can write a comprehensive enough email to perfectly resolve a deeply rooted conflict.
Oh man, we've all seen the email chain that devolves into an ego war.
The worst.
It starts as a simple logistical problem, but by email number 20, it's a massive thesis with bullet points, bolded text, and like 5 CC'd executives.
And the words stopped conveying actual meaning 10 emails ago.
Exactly. They have just become weapons of ego. Everyone involved is exhausted, defensive, and further away from the solution than when they started.
The text warns that trying to construct or control reality with endless words gets you lost in the map while you completely forget to look at the territory.
The more you explain, the more you dilute your power. Instead, the directive is to hold fast to the center.
Let's visualize this. The external noise, the arguments, the justifications, the desperate need for external approval is the spinning rim of a wheel.
It is fast, chaotic, and loud.
And the center is the hub. It doesn't move, but its stillness is what allows all the movement to happen.
Okay, but let me push back on this for a second. We live in an information economy.
We do.
Our listener is literally listening to us use thousands of words right now to explain this text. How do we function in a world that absolutely requires communication if more words count for less?
This raises an important question because holding the center doesn't mean retreating to a mountaintop and taking a vow of silence.
Right, that wouldn't be very practical.
No, and honestly, that would just be another rigid ego trip, constructing an identity out of being spiritual. You still have to participate in the information economy. You still have to communicate in your relationships.
So what changes?
Your communication becomes anchored. When you speak from the spinning rim, you speak reactively. You are talking to manage your own anxiety, to fill the uncomfortable silence, or to prove you are the smartest person in the room.
But when you speak from the center, you observe the chaos from a non-reactive deck. You only use the exact words necessary to convey the truth of the moment.
And our source material provides 2 incredibly practical frameworks for implementing this immediately.
The first is a diagnostic question for your communication style. And I love this one. Before you speak in a meeting, before you hit send on that email, before you insert yourself into a conversation, you ask yourself, are you adding value or are you just filling the silence?
It's brutal if you actually apply it honestly.
It really is. Because most of the time we speak, we are just pumping a bellows that isn't pointing at a fire. We speak to justify our presence.
But the paradox is that by prioritizing quality over quantity, your words gain massive authority.
Think about the most respected people in any high-stakes environment. They are rarely the loudest.
Almost never.
They are the ones who sit quietly, absorb the chaos like an empty bellows, and then, when everyone else has exhausted themselves with endless talking,
They deliver one or two sentences that cut straight to the core of the issue.
and their words count for more precisely because they use fewer of them. They hold fast to the center, and they only speak when their words can carry the weight of that center out into the world. But, what about when the noise isn't coming from us? Like when the world is screaming, when the crisis hits, and our internal center feels like it's completely collapsing.
The source material provides a brilliant 3-step physical and mental check-in designed to completely disarm a stressor.
And step 1 is stop the motion. You have to physically break the momentum of the chaos.
You pause completely for 60 seconds, you step away from the keyboard, you put the phone in another room.
You cannot adjust the mental momentum until you arrest the physical momentum. You literally force the bellows to stop pumping.
And then step 2 is locate the center. And the text gives a highly specific physical anchor for this.
It tells you to focus on your breath, but specifically to target the microscopic point where the inhale turns into the exhale.
Right.
And why that specific point. To understand this, we have to look at the neurobiology of what is actually happening in your body.
When you inhale, your sympathetic nervous system is slightly activated. Your heart rate imperceptibly speeds up.
And when you exhale, your parasympathetic nervous system takes over, engaging the vagus nerve and slowing your heart rate down.
But right at the turnaround, that fraction of a second after the inhale stops. But before the exhale begins, there's a suspension of physiological time.
It is a literal void in your autonomic nervous system.
Exactly.
By focusing your extreme attention on that infinitesimal gap, you are physically aligning with the concept of the void. You are dragging your mind away from the endless spinning rim of your anxieties and forcing it into the absolute present reality of the center.
You are utilizing your own biology to access equanimity.
So what does this all mean? Once you are anchored in that biological center, you move to step 3, which is observe without judging.
You bring the philosophy full circle. You look at the current stressor, the hostile email, the looming deadline, the family drama, and you view it through the lens of the straw dog.
You apply temporal distancing. When you are in the middle of a crisis, it feels like the end of the world because you are entirely consumed by the ritual.
The stressor is on the altar of your mind.
And you are bowing down to it, offering it all of your cortisol and anxiety. But step 3 forces you to recognize that this, too, is a temporary ritual object.
The universe is not humane. It will eventually toss this crisis into the dirt of the past, just like it tosses everything else.
The urgency will evaporate, the deadline will pass, the emotional intensity will completely fade.
By viewing the stressor as a straw dog, you instantly detach your ego from it. You don't ignore the problem, but you stop suffering over it.
You deal with it objectively, with an impersonal kindness from your center.
It is a complete cognitive reframe.
You take the relentless anxiety of modern life and you neutralize it with the ancient, indifferent mechanics of the Tao. We have covered a massive amount of psychological and philosophical ground today.
We really have.
We've gone from accepting the universe's terrifying neutrality to building the psychological armor of impersonal kindness. We've transformed the mind into an empty bellows that generates power through yielding, and we've anchored our language in the center of the wheel.
And we have a biological toolkit to disarm our daily stressors by recognizing them as temporary straw dogs.
But as always, understanding the mechanics is only the prerequisite. True equanimity is a daily, minute-by-minute practice.
You will lose the center a dozen times before lunch.
At least. The practice is simply noticing that you've been swept out to the spinning rim, pausing, finding the gap in the breath, and returning to the hub.
Returning to the form.
Before we close, there is one final avenue I really want to leave you with. Everything we unpacked today was structured around Stephen Mitchell's highly psychological, modern translation.
It is designed to be accessible to us.
Exactly. But what if we looked at Chapter 5 through the lens of a purely traditional, literal translation?
Oh, that changes things.
Take James Lake's classic translation, for example. He writes, "Heaven and earth do not act from any wish to be benevolent. They deal with all things as the dogs of grass."
The literal text strips away some of the modern psychological cushioning we just talked about. It forces a much starker confrontation with the absolute indifference of reality.
My challenge to you, the listener, as you go through your week, is to seek out one of these older, more literal translations.
Compare it to the concepts we discussed today.
Yeah. Does the idea of impersonal kindness hold up under the weight of a strictly literal reading? Or does the ancient text demand a much colder, more absolute detachment from the world?
See if the center shifts for you when the vocabulary changes.
It is the ultimate test of intellectual agility. Thank you all so much for taking this journey with us today. Stay curious, keep your bellows empty, and hold fast to your center. We'll see you next time.